coming up. A lot of interesting things coming. So we're just going to let in one or two more people coming in, and then we're going to get started.
Morning.
Morning, everybody. Morning. Welcome.
Morning.
Welcome. Okay. So we're ready to delve into. Last week we started speaking about some of the mystical customs that are done by the burial society, the Chevra Kadisha. And today we're going to talk a little bit more at length. I promised you last week we'll continue a little more about it. And one of the traditions or customs that we discussed before was about the sand or the earth that is placed in the casket. So we know that it's a Jewish tradition of burial societies for thousands of years. They've been doing it this way. They put into the box, in the plain pine casket or whatever casket they have, they place some earth in it. They place sand. And in the funeral homes, they have these special bags of sand from Israel that they have. That's usually used for it. So what they do is they place some of it in the casket, and then they also put some, we mentioned before, by the eyes and by the mouth and a few other places on the body. There's a little bit of that sand that's placed there. Someone mentioned before that it looks, if you look at it, it looks a little bit strange and all that. So we could talk to that just momentarily, but just first about the concept. And then we're also going to talk about, they also place little pieces of shards of earthenware, like a broken vessel of earthenware. They place little pieces in particular places throughout the coffin. And we could talk to that too. But first, let's talk about the age-old tradition of placing earth in the casket. So one of the reasons is because it's brought down that one should optimally be buried in Israel. It's a mitzvah to be buried in Israel. And because it's the Holy Land, it's our land, it's our earth. So a Jewish body should return back to the land of Israel. But not everyone is in a position to do so. Not everyone can go to Israel, for whatever reasons. They want to be near their families, so the families can come visit them, etc., etc. So they're buried outside of Israel. But there always was a special thing, people to go to Israel. A lot of people they put in their will, they want that the body should be shipped and brought to Israel. They tell a famous joke about a guy that was traveling on a trip to Israel. He's going on a holiday to Israel, and when he went to Israel, he also sent his dog. And when he arrived in Ben Gurion Airport, they give a look. And they give a look at the place where the dog was in, like in a box of some sorts, and they give a look. Lo and behold, the dog is dead. So they felt really, really bad for the guy, So this is Elal, and so they called the guys from the Shin Bet. They didn't know what to do. Like they have to do something that the person's going to be completely, disturbed that his dog died on the trip. So when the guy comes, he comes to claim his dog. They quickly send somebody from the Israeli Shin Bet to go and find an identical dog, exactly the same Cocker Spaniel, whatever dog. And they found a dog that looks identical to that dog. And the guy comes and says, "I have my dog." They bring him the dog. He says, "It's not my dog." They said, "What do you mean it's not your dog? It is your dog. It's your dog." Guy says, "I know my dog. This is not my dog." He said, "How's it possible? Prove it." He says, "I'll prove it to you very easily. My dog was dead. I was bringing him here to bury him in Israel. so, so that's how I know it's not my dog. The Shin Bet tried to get some another dog, didn't work. But that's how important it is for some Jews to be buried in Israel, not just themselves, but they even bring their dog to be buried in Israel. Anyways, that's just a joke. But going back to the real story is that there is a mitzvah to be buried in Israel. And why is there such a mitzvah? Like I said, because it's the Holy Land. And it's important that the Jewish body gets buried in the land of Israel. But more than that, there also is the concept that Jews believe in the revival of the dead. And that we believe that one day the body will be reunited with the soul again and it will come back to life. And it's brought down that will happen in Israel. That the bodies will all rise in Israel. So it says, what about the bodies that were buried outside of Israel? How are they going to come and rise in Israel? So it says that God is going to make tunnels. It says underground, and the body will have to shift from Canada across underneath the Atlantic Ocean. Underneath there'll be a tunnel all the way to come out in Israel. But and then the body will all the bodies will rise in Israel itself. So it's brought down in order to avoid that tedious journey of the body underground. I guess the tunnels will be not perfect, so it'll be hard. You have to walk. It's a long trip. So to avoid that, we're buried in Israel to start with. This way they don't have to deal with this long traveling. You don't have to take the El Al flight on the ground, although the underground to get to Israel. But be as that may, exactly how that works, I don't understand myself. But this is what's brought in the Talmud. But nonetheless, there always was an importance that you be buried in Israel. So if you're not buried in Israel, you're still buried in some earth that's from Israel. So that's one of the reasons why we place some earth in the coffin. But we also we don't just put it into the grave, we put the earth actually in the coffin itself. And there are some other mystical ideas involved in this. And that is that the Torah says, from the earth you shall come and to the earth you shall return. So there is some kind of an ecosystem here that just like the soul goes from its spirit, it says God gave us a spirit, and then the spirit returns back to God. The body as well, it comes from the earth and it returns back to the earth. The Kabbalists speak, and many of the Mussar it speaks about that the decomposing of the body is a form of atonement for the body, because we know that when a person commits a crime, a person commits a sin, even not such a serious sin, the sin was committed by the body and the soul. So we know that the soul goes to heaven and has a judgment, and the soul is dealt with on a spiritual level. So the soul, we know, needs to go through a cleansing period, and that serves as its atonement and correction for the things that may have done wrongly in this world, either intentionally or inadvertently. So there is an atonement that is brought onto the soul in the first year after a person passes away. That's why Kaddish is said for a year, to give more merits for the soul. So there's a period of judgment for the soul. But what about the body? Does the body get away stark free? Does the body like the soul, the body and the soul, they both sin together? Maybe the body did even more of the sin than the soul, right? The body was getting all the enjoyment of the sin. And the soul is the one that has to be, they go through the whole atonement in hell, or wherever it goes to, right? And the body just goes away like without any judgment for the body. So some say that the judgment's going to come if when the body will come back with the soul in the afterlife, when all the bodies will return, the body and soul together will receive its judgment at that time. But in many of the holy books, it says that there also is a form of correction for the body, and that is the decomposing of the body. It's known as in Kabbalah, it's called chibut hakever. Chibut hakever starts off there is some kind of a judgment that happens to the body right at the beginning after the body is buried. It's called chibut hakever, and it has something to do with mystical things and angels and all kinds of things that happen in the grave itself that the body goes through. So, and then the decomposing of the body that happens naturally, the course of nature, that serves as part of that correction, so to speak, for the human, for anything we may have done wrong. It dislocates all the impurities of the body. So just like there are impurities in the soul that needs to be cleansed, there are some impurities, some klipot, and the body that needs to be cleansed, and that happens in the grave. And that is part of the process of the decomposing of the body in the grave. And that's why we also replaced that sand from Israel there to start that process already right immediately. Right when we put already some sand inside it, that process is already started. It's sort of preempted. Okay, so now I'm just telling you, there's all kinds of mystical things involved with all the different things, all the different traditions that we have. They go back a long way, and they come from all the great mystical aspects of the afterlife. So I told you a little bit about the earth from Israel that's placed in the coffin. But then there also is, last week someone mentioned that there also are these shards of earthenware that are found inside the coffin. That the Chevra Kadisha, the Holy Society, they place in the coffin. I hope you don't mind. I'm speaking. This is like a lot of gory stuff, but that's just, I'm just trying to give you some of the, we see in the way that we do burial the wealth of tradition that the Jewish people have. So there are shards of earthenware. It's like almost like in Yiddish, I think it's called the Sharbelach, called Sharbelach. It's called the Yiddish, they call them, and in English it's shards of earthenware, of clay. So basically, it's like a clay dish that was broken, and you have like little pieces of like china, not china, but earthenware, and they have little pieces, broken pieces. So where does that come from? Every day, every year, when we speak about the body and we speak about the judgment on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, when we speak about who will live and who will die, if you look carefully at the liturgy, you'll see that the liturgy over there speaks about that the human body is like nothing. It's like a wind blowing, a withering wind, a withering plant. And another example it gives, kecheres hanishbar, like the broken earthenware. Like, why do we use the earthenware? Because we know that the body comes from the earth and returns to the earth. So the body without the soul, without meaning, is just like a broken piece of clay, a broken piece of earthenware. So the word cheres hanishbar, the earthenware that's broken, and we place that also to remind ourselves of the fragility of life, of the fleeting nature of the body, by placing those little broken pieces of cheres in the coffin. And last week we had the question was asked, well, they noticed that they placed it on the eyes, covering the eyes. Now, covering the eyes, it's a sort of weird thing if you ask me, right? It sounds weird. What is it? Why they place these two pieces like it looks like a, whatever. Place it on the eyes. So there is, like I say, everything goes with lots of tradition, lots of history. If you give a look, when Joseph, the king of Egypt, the viceroy of Egypt, was present when his father passed away, it says a thing that he kissed his father, and then he closed his father's eyes. So there is a Jewish tradition that when a person dies, you close their eyes. Why? But that's the tradition. It goes back all the way back to Joseph in Egypt. To close the eyes of it, when a person passes away, we're taught that you have to make sure for sure that they've passed properly. The doctors have to say that the person is actually dead, But the heart stops beating. But the olden days, they used to actually, in order to prove that a person was dead, it was breathing that was the most important thing. So in the olden days, they used to place a feather by the nose. And if the feather wasn't moving, you knew that the person had passed away. That was the old traditional way of doing it. Today, there's different measuring sticks that they used to prove that a person has passed away. One is obviously it's called the clinically dead, brain dead. There's no brain waves, but we know that brain waves, the heart could still be pumping even after that for a little while, not for long, a little while after that, and the person will be breathing. So death is after the person stopped, not just the brain waves, the heart stopped, and there is no breathing. That was always the main thing, because the word neshama comes from the word nishima, which means breath. So God breathed into Adam a breath of life. So we consider the breath the key. So when the breathing stops, so after the breathing stops, it's brought down. You wait for half an hour, an hour. You have to still wait. Because who knows, it could be a miracle, a person could be revived or whatever, right? So it says you wait a half an hour, and you're not supposed to touch the deceased at that point. And after the hour, after half an hour, it says it's brought down, you're supposed to close the eyes and wait for the Chaver Kadisha to come and, move the body away, but close the eyes. There is a concept of closing the eyes. Some people can't do it themselves. They wait for the Chaver Kadisha to come, they do it. But there is a concept of closing the eyes. Why? Why do we close the eyes? And not only close the eyes, but now we have something else. We cover the eyes. So there's a concept of not just closing the eyes, but also placing these pieces of clay, the broken pot, the broken human experience, physical experience. We cover the eyes. So there's something very, very deep over here as to why is that significant. And it's brought down in many of the holy books that the idea is that when a person passes away, they're moving to another sphere, they're moving from the physical now to the spiritual. And even the body is like sort of going to rest. But now there's a new world. And it's almost like what it says in the Beit HaMikdash. It says that when the Kohanim, the Levites, when they used to move the holy vessels, the Ark of the Covenant, when they traveled to 40 years in the wilderness, they would have to dismantle the temple, and they would take the different parts were there, the different holy vessels were there, the Ark of the Covenant, the Ten Commandments, the menorah, the table of the showbread, the altars. It says they were not supposed to look. The Levites, when they were there, they're not covered it. They're not supposed to look at the actual artifacts because they were so holy that if you looked at it, you could pass out. So you're not allowed to look at it because it was something so spiritual. So it says not to keep their eyes open, not to look when the holiness was put away. So now the person's deceased is symbolically going now to another sphere, another world. And so that's the idea of closing the eyes. But not just do they close the eyes, but they also cover the eyes with the shards that go inside the coffin. It's placed on the eyes, but not just it's a double covering, the eyelids, and you also place they also place these pieces on the eyes to show that unlike in the other societies, they keep your eyes open, right? And they make you like they dress you up, and in other societies. By us, it's not. By us, we believe now the human being, the spirit, is going to another space, a space where there is no more physical viewing. So not only are you not supposed to view the deceased, but the deceased is not supposed to view the world. Symbolically, obviously they can't see, but symbolically you close their eyes to say now they're moving into another space that we don't understand, and they too don't understand till they reach that level. But in the interim, the eyes are closed, and that's why they place the shards on top of the eyes, sort of to create this kind of a symbolic reverence for what they're about to experience. They're now coming closer to God. I'm just giving you some ideas of what's written in the holy books, so you understand where it's coming from. I'm not saying it's a nice sight. You mentioned about the sight. It's not a nice sight. But in general, the thing is like this: that in other religions, there is a big thing about the viewing. They place the body. They have these undertakers that come there, and they puts up the person. They get them all dressed up, and they make them beautiful, and they get them dressed in their finest suit, and they get them and they puff up their face and make it nice and red and put makeup on. It's a whole spiel. It's a big thing. That they do. They learn in school how to do it. It's a whole course for the people from the funeral homes. They do that. And then they prepare the body in a casket. They bring it out, and there's a viewing. Everybody goes by and says hello and goodbye. And by Jews, it was never that. It was just to be honorable to the body, to clean it, to cleanse it, like we spoke last week about the washing and the cleansing, spiritual cleansing, and all that. Preparing it for its journey to another space. But in Judaism, it's realistic. It's not make believe. It's not like we're trying to get dressed up like in a tuxedo. It doesn't work that way. Everybody goes. They get dressed. They're dressed in tachlichim. Tachlichim are plain, simple, white garments. They are the special white clothing that you go going to be. The body is the soul is preparing itself to go before Hashem. So they wear the shrouds called shrouds, tachlichim. They're also not fancy. Trust me, they're not. There's no tie on the tachlichim. There is undergarments and overgarments, and then there's a long garment they wear on top, and on top of that is a gartel. They place like a sash that goes around the person, and in front of the sash they tie it, and when they tie it, they tie it like with a shin. It's a special way to tie it. First they take it around a few times, like 13 times or something. It's like it's a whole mystical thing, and every time they say the word barachamim, 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 with mercy, with mercy, with mercy, 3 times. That they do it. At the end they do like 13 times. And then they make out of the edge of what's left of the sash, they create a shin, like the Hebrew letter gods, like on the mezuzah, you have the letter shin. So they make they make like 3 bows, and they tie it together so it comes out like a shin over there. I'm telling you, these are customs and traditions that go back thousands of years. I don't mix into this stuff, And then comes at the end of when the person is wrapped already in their palace and then the sheet and everything. Chevra Kadisha says, and the name of the head of the Chevra Kadisha stands up and says, "We want you to know." They say it out loud. It's very touching, and like they're speaking to the person, and they say, "We want you to know that your Hebrew name is Moshe ben Tzvi or Chana bas Tzvi, whatever it is. Don't forget. Soll's nicht vergessen in Yiddish. I know it's in Yiddish. Soll's nicht vergessen. Don't forget that this is your Hebrew name." It's very like frightening. Right? Like they shouted him, "Don't forget that this is your Hebrew name." And tell it to him. Why? Because it's brought down that the person, the soul, body, when they come, there's an angel there that they come, they meet. The angel asks them the first thing before they're able to go to wherever they have to go. The angel asks them, "What's your name?" And if you don't know your name, you can't go through. And it says that usually the person forgets their name, because they're so traumatized by leaving their loved ones. It's brought down. They're traumatized by leaving their family, leaving their loved ones, leaving the world, and the changes that's taking place. They're so traumatized that they don't even remember their name, but they have to first say what their name is before they can move on further. So that's why the Chevra Kadisha tells them, you should know, this is your name. So when the angel comes and asks you, "What's your name?" You know, you remember, you just heard it. So you can say the name. It's a very interesting, mystical thing, that the first thing when a child is born, we have a baby naming, either a bris or a baby name, give them the name. And the last thing we say to the person before they go, "Don't forget, this is your name." Because to Jews, the name has always been an important thing. You know, one of the Chumashim, the 5 books of Moses, is called Shemot, the names. The Eila Shemot B'nai Yisrael, and these are the names of the Jewish people. A name is very important. If you give a look at the word neshama, which means soul, if you look in neshama, you'll see the word shem is inside the word neshama. Neshama is spelled nun shin mem hey. The word for name is shem, shin mem. So the name is the channel to the soul, according to the Kabbalah. And that's why it sort of tells the soul where its path is, where it needs to go. It's not just to know your name and you forget your name. You have to know what's your spiritual connection, what's your conduit, what's your spiritual path that you need to connect to when you get up there. And so the soul is told, "Don't forget, this is your name, your Hebrew name. Vergesst nicht." And it's because the name is we know that a soul is a breath of God. But it's not just a breath. Every soul has its personality. Every soul has its particularity. Every soul has its particular talents, its character traits, its individualism, which God grants it. It gives it its talents. It gives it its ability to think and to feel and to persevere and to overcome all challenges. That personality of the soul is connected to the name. The name is symbolic of the individual character of the soul. And that's why it's so important that the first thing that when the soul comes into the world, the parents give the child a name, and the Kabbalists say that the parents give the name, but the name actually was there before. That was the name of the soul. The parents have just a moment of prophecy where they tap into the energy of the child. They look at the child in its eyes, and they can see the channel of energy of this child, and based on that, they give the name. God gives them a prophecy to know what name is the name of the soul from before. The soul always had that name. And before you leave, again, when you go back to the other world, you need to be told by the Chevra Kadisha, they tell the person, don't forget, vergesst nicht. This is your soul. And then they also go on and they ask for forgiveness from the people that have washed the body, etc. And they ask for forgiveness. We ask for mechila in case we did something that was disrespectful. Sometimes it's hard. You're doing things to the body, and maybe you could have dropped, the face, the foot or the head or this, or moved or banged something. Something disrespectful. Maybe somebody in the room made a joke or something like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't appropriate in front of the person. So we treat the person after they die with great respect. A lot of times I go into the hospital rooms and see people that have passed away, and the families there sitting and making jokes or speaking all kinds of nonsense as if the person is not there, or they speak about them in third person. I always tell you, I always call the family out. They want to talk to me about the person, come with me out in the other room. I'm not going to speak about the person there in third person, because we believe that there still is a spirit there in the room. But that's the way people are. It's like the person's dead already. Like they talk to him about like he's gone. That's not true. It says the spirit still hovers in the room and there, especially before they pass away. Or even before they pass away, when the person's in a coma or what. A lot of times the family's there for weeks. Sometimes you can't help yourself. You say something, a joke, or this, something inappropriate in front of the person, right? Or something about the person. Very respectful. You have to treat them like they're there. Same as after they're dead. The body's there. You have to treat them in a certain respectful way. So the Chevra Kadisha, well, those that are dealing with the body in the final moments before the burial, they too ask for mechila, ask for forgiveness from the soul. Again, I'm telling you all these different things because these are all like traditions. They go back way back, and they reflect our beliefs in the afterlife, our beliefs in the soul, and even in the some eternal aspects of the body itself. So I hope I didn't weird you out today, and I hope you enjoyed the class. And it's one of these real things that you might know now a lot of things that other people don't know about, but this is what goes on in the final moments of this. So if anybody has any questions, we're continuing next week. Hopefully we'll move on to something in a different.
Rabbi,
Yeah, go ahead.
maybe it's mystical. We are talking about death and what is happening after person passes on.
Wow.
And today is exactly 77 years since Soviet soldiers walked into Auschwitz-Birkenau.
That's right.
So I'm just thinking about the millions that didn't have any of these traditions being done to them.
Right. So we're
maybe many of us have our uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents perished there.
Wow.
So maybe it's something mystical that exactly today you are talking about this spiritual.
It should be a merit for them, and some, like you say, most of them over there weren't afforded a proper Jewish burial, weren't given the opportunity, not by their will, against their will, right? So whatever we spoke about should be a merit for those people, and we call them Kedoshim, we call them the holy ones, right? They bypassed all these traditions, So I just want to say that I wanted to speak about before, but that I mentioned that the decomposing of the body is part of a correction that takes place. It's brought down that there were many tzaddikim, righteous people, that they dug up the graves many years later, and they found that the body was still completely intact. There are such stories of some very righteous people that they had to, for whatever reason, they had to exhume the body and move it. Which you're allowed to exhume a body when it's for the honor of the person. So if let's say in some of these countries where they were planning on building a highway or something, so we have to, if it's for the honor, you're allowed to. You're also allowed to exhume a body if the person's wishes were they should be buried in Israel. So sometimes temporarily they bury them in the diaspora, but if that was their wishes, you're allowed to. You're also allowed to exhume a body if it's for purposes of burying the person in the family grave. It was impossible at an earlier point, and there is a family area. So there's allowance. So there are 3 or 4 allowances which I mentioned that halachically you're allowed to. Normally you're not allowed to move. But so there were incidents in history where they did move, and they found that some very righteous people that there was no decomposing. So it's like the same concept. So it's brought down the tradition that there's certain people that they're perfect. They don't decompose, but I don't know if that's a science. that is the tradition.
Rabbi, when you spoke about wrapping the body and the shin, it reminded me of putting on tefillin.
Right, in a way, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because you wrap and then you make a shin on your hand, right?
Shin, you mean a shin with the wrap? That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's right. Tefillin has a shin also, right? You make a shin on the wrap. Yeah. So it could be it's similar to that. But shin comes from the name Shaddai, which is one of God's names, and the shin is the name of protection. So whenever there's a need for protection of something, so we use the shin. Like the mezuzah has a shin on it, because it's the name of God which protects from the evil spirits, so to speak. It protects us, and it protects the home, and it protects also so the tefillin also serves as protection. So the nations of the world will see the tefillin and they will fear you. So the tefillin also serves as protection. I guess this form of garment, as the soul makes its journey, it needs like a mezuzah protection. Kind of like a shin. Yeah, very good.
I have a question.
Yeah, Eddie.
We know what day it is today. You read the Shema in the morning.
Right.
You know what day it is, and you think about at Yad Vashem, the place of that room for the kids.
Right.
Makes you wonder.
Yeah, for sure. I think about that too many times, Eddie. But for those that have lost younger people in their lives, and in many different ways, it's our job not to forget them, and that way we perpetuate their memory. But we believe that everyone has a mission in life, and some of those missions are completed in longer lifetimes, and others complete the mission in a shorter stay in this world. But we're all just passengers, We're all just going through this life. It's a temporary dwelling, and some are lucky that we're able to be here for a longer time, and some, But we said last week, if it's a country club up there, maybe it's better. The faster you get to the country club, the better off you are. So who knows? The story of the guy.
Thanks, Rabbi.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rabbi, for the explanation for the chart of the eyes.
I tried addressing your issue last, whatever. Yeah, and then
Thank you.
I'm still traumatized by that myself too, but it's nothing to do. But I'm just trying to give you the picture of it, where it comes from. Yeah.
I didn't know, and when I saw my mother, I said she was damaged all over again. She was supposed to be more pure and more beautiful. And
it looks a little clowny if you don't know what to expect.
no, I was taken aback.
Yeah. But they don't do anything to the body itself. It's just on top. It's on the external.
I know.
Yeah.
I wanted to see her beautiful, like.
Right, right. I always warn people. Sometimes I do recommend, even though the Jewish tradition is not to view the remains, but I do say that it's important. At least one family member should identify the person before they're buried, so that there are stories of people that were exchanged. So it's very important to make sure that the right person is at the right place. Horror stories, but I mean, it happens 1 in a million. But one should make sure that they identify the person. Someone should identify the person before they're buried.
Rabbi, Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat
Thank
shalom.
you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Nice to see Jeffrey. Jeffrey, hello. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. How you doing? Shalom aleichem. Come around the shul, man. I miss you. Take care. We'll see you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Shalom.
Bye.